Posted by you/novel patient 2465. I bought a small starter home during the housing market crash, completely by myself. I lived there for the better part of a decade before buying a larger home with my now husband. My parents really wanted to live there because it was small and easy to maintain. They have foreclosed in the past, so there's no way they would be capable of getting a mortgage. Also, my dad is retired, and my mom doesn't work. They wanted to rent from me. For a discounted rent, they paid off the mortgage, let's say $50,000, with an inheritance of over 6 figures that my parents received. A lease was written explaining that it was a prepayment of rent, and their rent would only cover taxes and insurance, which amounted to $350 per month. It would basically only increase when taxes or insurance increased. We signed the lease, with all the other typical terms included, and had it notarized, and that's how it's been for a while now. To be clear, I'm not making a frickin' dime on this house. I recently told them the rent would go up by $3, yes, $3 due to a slight increase in the insurance. My mother lost her crap, claiming I'm a money-hungry bitch. She said she was going to rip out everything she had done, garden and other cosmetic changes, that I owe her, and that I can't evict her because it's her house. She said she's not responsible for the insurance, even though the lease says otherwise, and claimed the insurance hasn't gone up in a decade. She also accused me of trying to make her pay my personal homeowner's insurance, and that a court will side with her and give her my house. We have a notarized lease. They are listed as tenants, and I am the only one on the deed. My father demanded the bills, he has zero balls or backbone, to check if I'm ripping them off. P.S. This house is a commutable distance from Manhattan, where a studio apartment costs around $1,500. This is a house with a large yard for their dog. I could easily get $2,000 for it, even before they moved in. I sent them copies of the taxes and insurance, showing only their address. P.S. I'm charging them discounted taxes, you get a discount for paying in full 90 days early. I told them to add it up, divide by 12, and suggested my mother talk to a lawyer so they could set her straight. I guess my father agreed with me because now she's divorcing him. Edit. First, I want to thank everyone. I was mainly just venting because I was very upset after the exchange and have been dealing with some health issues, which my parents know about, so it's just a range of emotions right now. I keep getting a lot of the same questions. They have lived there for 4 years now. My mom has always been entitled and an alcoholic, weekends and summers were spent with family, and my aunt admitted when I was an adult that it was to keep us from being around the alcohol. I mainly did this for my father so he could finally retire after having heart surgery, following 36 years of physically demanding work. They asked to rent the house and pay it off as a prepayment of rent, so the only big monthly bill would be their health insurance. I had a few others interested in renting my house. I did not ask my parents for this. They did not co-sign the mortgage or help with the down payment. Their names are not on my house or deed. There have been rent increases in the past due to taxes and insurance going up, and there was never an issue before. Unfortunately, my husband's dad passed away without getting to enjoy his retirement, a big reason why my husband told my dad he needs to retire and enjoy life a little, and his inheritance helped pay the down payment on our new house. My mom has a history of putting crap on me, and I guess $3 is my line in the sand. I started paying $200 a week after I graduated high school until I moved out at 20. I worked about 65 hours a week on top of school to manage this. And yes, unsurprisingly, they foreclosed after I moved out. I also stupidly put her on my phone plan and basically paid for her phone for 2 years until the contract ended because she only paid me for 3 months out of those 2 years. She promised money for my wedding and never delivered. They didn't pay for college, and they stopped paying for clothes or school expenses when I was 16 because I had a job. I know this is a parade of red flags, but I trusted my dad more than her and thought I was doing a good thing. I also want to keep this house because I love it and hope to move back one day. It's just too small for us as a young family, or allow my child to live there when they go to college, so they can have fun without parents hanging around or racking up dorm costs. Also, she threatens divorce all the time. I doubt she'll actually go through with it. Commenter. I'm confused. They paid off your mortgage to the tune of $50,000. How does that figure into things? If it was prepayment of rent, how was that calculated? Ops response. To sum it up, they were supposed to pay $1,350 per month. However, they paid for 50 months at $1,000 and covered the additional $350 upfront. If they moved out before 50 months, they've been there for 4 years, I would refund them $1,000 for each month they didn't get to live there. After 50 months, they would still only pay $350 instead of $1,350, but they wouldn't get anything back if they moved out because the full $50,000 would have been used. That's how it's outlined. So, there's very little of that $50,000 left that they haven't used. Not sure if that explains it clearly. Update 11 days later. I finally have an update for you all. so all aboard the Disappointment Express. To back up, after the divorce comment, they are not, in fact, getting a divorce. They even went and celebrated their anniversary at a casino. I didn't speak to them for a week. This past weekend, I tried talking to my father, hoping for an apology and that he would be in a better frame of mind. He wasn't. He doubled down on the BS, claiming they didn't realize everything I had put in the lease, that the house was uninhabitable when they moved in, which it wasn't, and that they wouldn't have put work into the house if they had known they were just renters. I asked them to specify, and they mentioned things like the garage screen door, the shed roof. My husband replaced 2/3 of it with my dad's help, and Dad did the other 1/3, and, by God, the hose leaked. None of that affects the livability of the house, but in the words of my lawyer, and you agreed to live there in its original condition, so that's on you, just like not reading the lease. My dad went on listing all the things they claimed to be doing for me, without acknowledging a single thing I've done for them. At that point, I said some not so nice things, including mentioning the alcohol-induced dementia everyone brought up. They had the nerve to ask if they were still going to be able to take my son to the fair. Not a fat chance in hell. I told them I didn't want either of them around me or my family until they stopped being delusional and decide to either pay the increase or get out. I cried after I got off the phone, and my husband was understandably upset with everything going on. Cut to today, my mother called me, asking what needed to be done to resolve this because not being able to see my son was upsetting to them. I told her they needed to apologize for what they called me and acknowledge that they were out of line. Well, you guys, it turns out they were scammed. My parents were frickin' scammed. That's what this whole ordeal was about. In my area, homeowners get daily calls, texts, and letters from people wanting to buy their houses. It's not new in this market. I've even told them these letters are trash. Apparently, my parents were getting calls from people claiming they were going to be renting the house and acting like they were representing me. Someone even showed up to their house, being very pushy about trying to see my mom inside the house. This all happened before I mentioned the rent increase. So when my mom heard about the rent increase, she thought these phone calls and this person were real, like I was going to raise the rent to something they couldn't afford and force them out. This was before I told them it was just $3, but even after that, they still thought I was throwing them out. I asked them why they didn't come to me and ask, and they said they were scared and felt like they had no place to go. I explained to them that's not even how it works. I can't just rent out a place with tenants already in it. There's a whole legal process, and they should know that. They apologized for how they acted, for everything they said, and were genuinely embarrassed. They were even more embarrassed that they fell for this person's scam and realized they had officially become old people who got duped, thinking they were smarter than that. Fortunately, they hadn't given any money or personal information yet. I told them the scammer was probably setting them up for it. Scammers often pretend to be renting a house, take first/last month's rent and a security deposit, and when the new tenants show up, the house is already occupied, leaving them out of their money, or scammers pretend they need money to let people keep living in their house. I have no idea why they believed or fell for this person, or why they never asked me in the first place since I don't and wouldn't hire a representative for my one house. Their cameras were off when the scammer came, but they're going to file a police report anyway. I told them to call the cops next time to file for harassment or trespassing if these people call or show up again. I got an apology from both parents. I explained everything in the lease and why it was legally written that way. I reassured them that I can't just throw them out on the street on a whim, and as long as they continue paying the minimum bills, taxes/insurance, I'll keep my end of the deal. So, that's my update. They're not getting evicted for now, but I might need to start monitoring them more closely to make sure they don't fall for other scams in the future. Commenter. Aha, and do they have proof of this scam? Honestly, it sounds like, rather than admit they acted like childish brats and apologize, they came up with this incredibly far-fetched story to make it easier for you to forgive them, which, if you want to go along with it, that's totally your call. They're your parents, and maybe it's easier to just let them have this one.